Okay, going to call the order to meeting, please. Can I have a mover and seconder to start the meeting? Councillor Cabral and Deputy Mayor Coughlin. That the regular meeting of the Council of the Township of Springwater of November 6, 2019 come to order at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? Carried. Please stand with the singing of the national anthem led by Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love, in all our sons commend. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you. So, does council have any pecuniary interest to declare? Okay, moving. Excuse me? Can we have quiet, please? Moving on to 4.1, we have a deputation from the County of Simcoe, re the Wildland Fire Agreement. Presentation by Graham Davis and Debbie Korolnik. Welcome. Please come forward. Welcome.
Thank you.
Maybe for the benefit of the crowd, we know you up here, but maybe you could introduce us and tell us what your positions are in the county, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for allowing us to come before Springwater Council tonight. My name is Debbie Korolnik. I'm the General Manager of Engineering, Planning and Environment at the County of Simcoe, and Graham Davis is the County Forester. We won't take up too much of your time. We wanted to talk to you tonight about the proposed replacement wildland firefighting agreement that the county has with 14 of 15 municipalities that have this agreement. It's an agreement with local municipalities for the joint benefit in responding to fires in Simcoe County forests, in the Simcoe County Forest. All municipalities have now signed off on this with the exception of Springwater. I believe this agreement came before your council in April of this year. And we believe that perhaps it was not adopted in Springwater Township because of maybe some misunderstanding or misinterpretation. So tonight what we would like to do is just review the terms of the agreement and provide an opportunity for questions from Springwater Council, and then we would really ask that perhaps the agreement be reconsidered by Springwater Council. With that, I'd like to turn over to Mr. Davis for a presentation.
Thank you, Debbie. And I didn't prepare an actual presentation. I didn't feel certainly want to take any more of your time than is necessary. Did provide a synopsis up front, and maybe I can just review that quickly just so we can all understand how we got here. So just taking us back to making sure we understand the original agreement. So what precipitated this goes back to 1996. That was the time when the Ministry of Natural Resources essentially backed away from the direct management of our county forest. That was done for many decades through an agreement with the province of Ontario and the Ministry of Natural Resources. And so up until 1996, fire was the responsibility of the province through that agreement. It was always the case that the local municipality would provide first response, but through the agreement with the province, they were responsible for fire control in all agreement forests across Ontario. So in 1996, the agreement was canceled. Simcoe County began managing the forest directly, and shortly after that time, there were a couple of fires that were attended by local brigades, local municipal fire departments, and without some substance and continuity of agreement, it was, I think, collectively decided that these agreements were needed to fill the void left by when the province exited, but they were specific to the county forest. There was a committee, a planning committee report that was brought to council in 1999, and it sort of lays the groundwork for that. So quite specifically dealing with the county forest, these agreements. So in 1999, that first template was in place. I would note that at that time, it was only signed with municipalities that actually had county forests within their borders. So Collingwood, for example, Midland never had an agreement. It was never deemed necessary because county forests were not within those areas. And the agreement, I think, has worked okay. Until a few years ago, there were some issues that started to rise that led to the discussion about a renewed agreement. I can very quickly, it was discovered for some reason that Remer had never signed on to the original agreement. That came to our attention in 2017, I believe. And between that township and myself, we really felt it inappropriate to bring a 1999 agreement forward for signature. So we started to talk about whether it wasn't time to renew the agreement, make sure the terms were up to date. We had also acquired and now had a county forest in Midland, so we needed a new agreement with Midland. And another issue had arisen where we did, and that sort of spoke to some of the ambiguity around that original agreement, where we received a bill for a car fire on a county road because of this agreement that really wasn't suited to this agreement. So there were a number of areas that came forward. It was actually a group of the provincial fire coordinators subgroup of all the fire chiefs in the county that initiated a meeting with myself, and we began to discuss collectively renewing the agreement. We took about 18 months, making sure that all the chiefs had an opportunity to review the new agreement, the new terms. I'd note that we added an additional fire cache to the new agreement because the county forest had grown. We added some specific training dollars in that new agreement as well, brought all the terms up to current standard, had it reviewed by legal, and brought a report forward to county council. So since that time, we do have all other municipalities that have adopted the agreement. Again, we're asking that perhaps Springwater reconsider. It leaves us in a bit of an awkward situation, and I think you could all understand, for consistency's sake and continuity, it's important that we're all on the same page with this agreement. So I think with that, opportunity for questions, comments. Maybe we can deal with any concerns or questions.
Thank you. I recall this coming up in a report dated April 3rd, 2019 by staff. The previous fire chief, Ian Gavay, Director of Fire and Emergency Services. And in the report it says that the proposed agreement is much more detailed and in some ways better than the existing agreement. However, it does reduce the scope of lands covered from the original agreement, and talks about the original agreement, the existing agreement is all lands and all roadways or allowances, as opposed to this agreement, I believe, referring to county forest. So it's the staff's opinion that the change in the wording, though reducing the billable areas covered, has this difference in it. Can you comment on that, please?
Well, what I can't explain is why the agreement was broadened back in 1999, because the intention was always specific to the county forest. I can tell you, from what I can understand, and I'm probably not the best person to answer that specifically, but there are other mechanisms for those other lands. You know, we've never had a situation since the original agreement that there was ever a billing for anything outside of the county forest, except one that was clearly not intended or didn't fit within the scope of this agreement. We've never had any concerns, I believe, on either side with what the intention of this agreement was for. And I don't believe there's ever been a case where there was something that fell outside of the scope, that there wasn't another mechanism to recover cost. So I don't believe that there's any loss of billable opportunity here.
Okay, any other questions, comments? And, I mean, the problem that it creates by keeping this one agreement, sure, it's different, and the others are according to your new agreement, but what is the practical problem related to that?
Well, I think there are some wording differences there. There's some training dollars that I think I'd like to see Springwater take advantage of that wouldn't be available through the old agreement. It does provide much better context to the municipalities that are host municipalities that actually retain the fire caches, and Springwater actually houses 2 of those. We have updated actually the specifications for those as well. There is the broader idea of consistency here for sure, to have us all on the same page and under one agreement.
Yeah.
But there's also those advantages specifically.
But the
to-
caches would still exist, and there
Caches
still
still
would
exist.
be, the
Correct.
training that you refer to is what sort of training?
So there's specific training for wildfire as opposed to structural type fires. And the chiefs had asked if we could find a way to provide some of those training dollars through this new agreement. So there is $2,500 annually that's available for municipal staff for wildland firefighter training through the new agreement that is not there under the old one.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, we will review it. Thank you very much for coming out. Can I have a mover and a seconder to receive the delegation? Councillor Moore and Councillor Chapman. That the delegation from the County of Simcoe regarding the wildland fire agreement be received. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time we're at 4.1, and I'm going to turn the chair over to Deputy Mayor Coughlin for this next item.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. And before we do welcome the presenters to the table, I do just want to take a moment, as I feel it's necessary, to establish or reaffirm the conduct and respect of this chamber deserves. It is not my intention to mute or stifle any member of council, staff, or public from having their concerns or questions addressed by our Integrity Commissioner. However, it is my intent to ensure that this chamber does not become a platform for public shaming or make a mockery of the positions we are elected to hold. I simply ask that questions posed are in a manner respectful to the individuals identified in the documents, and the decorum remain deferential and germane to the process. So please, Janice, Jeffrey.
Thank you,
Are these on?
Madam Deputy Mayor. Yeah, these are on, are they not? Thank you. So with respect to item 4.2 on the agenda, the suspension investigation report, we really have nothing to add to that. We do not intend to speak to the report. The statute requires, in circumstances such as these, that we advise the council when we have suspended the investigation, and we will simply wait in have that in abeyance.
Thank you. Are there any questions from council at this time? Councillor Hanna?
Thank you. Through the chair, there's no name on that report. Can you advise us who the author of that report is?
The author of the report is the response is from Principles Integrity. I should have introduced ourselves. Principles Integrity is the Integrity Commissioner for Springwater. Janice and I are the sole partners in that in the partnership, which is Principles Integrity.
Any further? Yes, Councillor Cabral?
Thank you. Through the chair to Principals Integrity. I'm just wondering here if bringing this forth at this time, if it was under suspension, is that a requirement that it be done at the council meeting and not a final report that would normally come to the council meeting? I'm just wondering why it's before us here when it's merely been suspended, whether or not that had to be something that actually had to come here to council.
Certainly, thank you for the question. It's a requirement of the statute in circumstances such as these when we report when there's a matter that has been referred to another body for adjudication, such as the police, that our report is suspended by operation of that law, and it is our requirement to report to council.
Councillor Ritchie?
Can you speak up? I can't hear you, and I'm sure the rest of the people can't hear you neither.
All right,
So either lean in or speak up or do something.
Certainly, I'll lean in.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from council? I also have a question similar to Councillor Cabral's. The question I had, the reason I posed, and I did speak to, thank you, and I did speak to you earlier, but for disclosure. Earlier on October 29th, I received an email saying that there was an investigation or complaint against me and that it would not be further investigated. And to me, transparency or communication with council, can you explain why the process then is that, you know, our council essentially has 3 reports, one finding, one suspended, and one not investigated. So to me, all reports should be held equally, and I'm just curious as to why you're choosing to report some and not on others.
If you recall back in the training, when we did training for council, we explained that it is, our process is such that when we have engaged in a matter, there's been a complaint and we engaged in a matter that does not result in a finding against a member that they breached an ethical provision either in the code or the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Our default position is that we do not report to council. We provide reasons to the complainant and we provide a courtesy response to the member. In our view, it's not helpful to the municipality if we are continually reporting out on in circumstances where there has been no finding of breach, and indeed it would be a costly endeavor to do that in each case. So in your case, there was no finding of breach. It was determined very early on that was the case, and so that, in our view, was the end of the matter. You're quite right. This is a bit of a course in Integrity Commissioner reporting. In the Mayor Allen case, as I've explained, there's an obligation, a statutory obligation to report to council on the suspension, and that is why we report that, and we'll be saying no more on the subject. And the third incidence is the next item on the agenda, where there is a report from the Integrity Commissioner where there have been findings of non-compliance with an ethical provision.
And thank you, and I guess it's a follow-on unless other members of council. When you do speak to the lengthy time or before us, when phone calls or when people or residents or members of council inquire with you, if it's a quick phone call or an email, how are we billed? Because when I do have questions, I don't want to be calling you every day to figure this out, nor do I want to rack up a bill. So how is it part of the retainer then? Like, how much of this is how are we billed?
No, it's a fair question. There is a retainer that's paid for by the county in your circumstances, and then there's an hourly rate that is paid for everything else. We do offer capped rates for training and per diem, which reduces the cost on an hourly rate. But for questions for advice or on investigations, it's a straightforward hourly bill. The bill is anonymized because there are, again, statutory obligations for us to maintain confidentiality, and so where there is a month in which we have activity, we submit a report to the clerk's office.
Thank you. Are there any further questions at this time? All right, seeing none, I need a mover and seconder that the report from the Integrity Commissioner regarding suspension of investigation dated October 24th, 2019 be received. A mover and seconder. Moore and Allen. Councillor Moore and Chapman. And all those in favor? And opposed? and that is carried. And I will be returning the chair back to Marilyn.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Next is 4.3, and we'll continue with Jeffrey and Janice to make a presentation, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm being heard adequately, Councillor? You can hear me? Good. Thank you. I won't say it's our pleasure to be here tonight. In fact, as we state in the report, we were of the view that this report, the matter could have been resolved in another fashion. Regrettably, we are here, and the report does speak to itself. The allegations are recited in the report. The code provisions that are invoked are set out in the report. Originally, there were 3 respondents to this. The complaint had 3 members of council as respondents, and we resolved that there were no code violations with respect to 2 of those 3 members. The role of integrity commissioners generally, as you know, we assist in the development of your ethical framework, the adoption of codes of conduct. We engage in education. One of the most important pieces is we provide advice to members of council and of local boards on their ethical responsibilities. And there is this residual function, which is to serve as an independent mechanism when persons feel that an ethical transgression has occurred. We operate within an administrative law framework. It's not the criminal law, it's not the constitutional law, it's an administrative law framework which doesn't put the public purse at serious risk. It's a process which is more streamlined than you might find in a tribunal setting. Nevertheless, there are procedural protections for the individuals involved in the process. It is our desire in every case to attempt to resolve a matter that comes before us, a complaint that comes before us in an informal way. And indeed, in this case, we offered that opportunity to meet with the respondent on several occasions, and we were rebuffed in each case. And so we engaged in investigation. We spoke to the complainant, we spoke to witnesses, we spoke to persons who could corroborate what the witnesses were telling us, and we spoke to the other 2 members of council who were involved in the complaint. At the end of the day, we made the findings as stated in the report. This is not a case where we're recommending any kind of punitive monetary sanction. In fact, as in all of our cases, we hope that these reports are seen as learning opportunities. These are not just words that we've created for the purpose of today's session. Janice and I, Principals Integrity, as a member of the Municipal Integrity Commissioners of Ontario, we have actually led their exercise in developing a statement of principles for Municipal Integrity Commissioners who belong to that association. I just want to, it struck me just before coming up here that the last 3 paragraphs of our statement of principles is relevant to the discussion tonight. So we carry out our work. We do this by exercising restraint and a solution-oriented perspective, favoring teaching opportunities over sanctions. And we hope that that occurs as a result of this evening's presentation. We do this by being collaborative while protecting the independence of our role. And we do this by making findings on the balance of probabilities while exercising the judgment of a reasonable person fully informed of relevant facts and circumstances. And so that's been adopted by the Municipal Integrity Commissioners of Ontario. We live by that and indeed carried out our role with respect to this particular inquiry on that basis. I can go into the detail if you wish, Mayor, but I don't think it necessary. The report speaks for itself in that regard, but we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Would you like to say something, Councillor Hanna?
It's not my intent to get in debate with the presenters here over the report, but I do have a statement I intend to read, and I'll read it now.
Yes.
Thank you. Having read the report and the manner in which the information has been kept from me has instilled a strong desire for me to react with a direct and pointed condemnation of those responsible. In an effort to maintain the professional decorum, I will take the high road. It is extremely concerning that the process would allow an employee who was not in attendance at an event and was leaving the employment of our township the mechanism to lodge this complaint against myself and 2 other members of council. The manner in which this was dealt with raises fundamental questions about procedure fairness, natural justice, and impartiality. CAO Brindley's first efforts, as set out in page 25, Part A of the Township Code of Conduct Guidelines, should have been to resolve any complaints consistent with the informal complaint procedures, rather than to lodge a complaint that was based on hearsay. I first learned on July the 12th by email that I had been accused of making a disrespectful comment about staff in relation to my not attending the staff barbecue. I was shocked when I got a draft report on October the 1st and learned that Mr. Brindley's complaint had been expanded and now included allegations that were not in the original complaint. This is complete denial of natural justice and procedure fairness. I note I was only advised of the additional allegations on October the 1st after I advised the Integrity Commissioner that I had contacted the Law Society of Upper Canada to inquire if the failure to provide me full disclosure was a violation, unprofessional, and/or unethical. Page 28, Section 9.A of the Code of Conduct states that the Integrity Commissioner must provide the complainant and the supporting material to the member whose conduct is in question and provide the member an opportunity to respond. The mandatory disclosure of information has never been provided to me. I did respond by email immediately to the original complaint on Friday, July the 12th. I stated, this is a total exaggeration. When I was asked if I was attending the staff barbecue, my response was that I had been doing it for 8 years, that staff should be doing it for council. I was joking. The report states to the effect that while I and 2 other councillors were having a conversation, I was heard to make this comment. I did state when asked if I was attending the staff barbecue that I was not attending, as I've been doing it for 8 years and staff should be doing it for council. I've stated that in jest many times as staff that I normally interact with, and I have that type of rapport. To be clear, I do not believe that staff should be barbecuing for council. Had the investigators followed up on some of my information I provided in relation to that, they would have realized that not only have I attended the staff barbecue, that one time when I was unable to attend, my wife took the day off work and she came and did it in my place. The investigator would also have been able to determine that one of those barbecue days, I sat and held one of the staff employees' babies while she could eat her meal. Mr. Abrams, who is the current IC Integrity Commissioner, presented his lengthy code of conduct early this year. I questioned the need for all the extra rules that exceeded the 4 rules required by the province. He asked me at that time, quote, "Are you a lawyer?" Excuse me. I took it that unless I was a lawyer, I was not qualified to question him. Given our history, Mr. Abrams should have recused himself from this complaint. Excuse me. The author describes my option to decline an interview as being rebuffed and or being dismayed. The Integrity Commissioner does not have the authority to force me to be interviewed. I did provide detailed responses. The Integrity Commissioner's failure to provide me proper disclosure, excuse me, and on my lawyer's advice, quote, not to attend without legal representation, which was going to be expensive, I resisted the pressure to be interviewed. I believe the report includes inflammatory wording by an unidentified author, The findings are not based on facts alone, but are more on personal assumptions. This and the failure to provide the mandated disclosure violates the standards of natural justice and procedural fairness legislated to protect the rights of all individuals. The report even says that conclusions do not require an opinion based on facts and arbitrarily excludes reasonable doubt, which is the normal test for natural justice and procedural fairness. Nowhere in our code or legislation does it suggest that the proof of a complaint is not required. The author seems to take judicial direction which is not granted to him or her. Not only is this an attempt to discredit me, it has the potential to create impression that staff are not to be trusted and that this is a dysfunctional council. I can assure residents that this is not the case. The current practice of immediately reporting complaints to an outside agency fuels the problems and generates a waste of tax dollars. The process, which includes steps with required threshold mediation to eliminate frivolous and vexatious attack complaints, which I believe is the basis of the complaint against me, needs to be followed. Volunteers are also concerned they and staff need to be protected from similar attacks by resentful individuals. The effects of this process and the 31-page code of conduct for councillors has the potential to control and silence your elected representatives. In conclusion, I view this complaint as improper because it is not submitted by a witness of the alleged event and based on hearsay. I view it as frivolous because the alleged comments are not directed at any particular person or persons and are claimed to have resulted from eavesdropping on a private conversation. I view it as vexatious because it could be expected to have the effect of silencing me. I did not make any negative comments about staff. I do not intend to be silenced. I believe that the other councillors who were at or in attendance and also accused in the original complaint will confirm that I did not make these allegations. Apologizing would indicate that I did or said something wrong. I did not make the alleged statements and cannot validate the complaint or report by making a false apology. I want to thank those who are here tonight, and I want to also thank those who provided support during this attempted character assassination. I will endeavor to persevere.
Thank you. Without getting back and forth and into the details, I'll give the opportunity of principal integrity to respond. Just in a general fashion to the statement that's been made, and then I'll open it up for discussion.
Point of order, sir.
Yes?
They've tabled their report. They've stated in their thing here that I was found to be in violation of the code of conduct. I've made my statement. What's the purpose of now having them try to attack me further at this table?
I didn't say attack, Councillor. I said you've made allegations with respect to the way the report was drafted and communicated. They, like anybody else, should have the ability to have a response to that.
I appreciate that, and I'll follow up with my necessary response.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Excuse me, Marilyn, point of order, I have to agree that we've set the stage this evening. If there's any further questions from members of council, there is an opportunity for us to reach out to the commissioners. Sorry, my mics are really far away from me, so it takes me a minute. I don't know. Okay, can you hear me now? Yeah. Thank you. All right, I do not feel that at this point, if there are other questions from members of council that need to be resolved by the Integrity Commissioner, I can understand that. But moving forward, I don't see, I'm sorry, I think that the decorum, I think that the meeting needs to remain in that fashion. So I respectfully, if there's any other questions from council, but otherwise I think that we should just continue on.
Okay. Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I don't have a question for principals integrity, but I do have a statement of my own that I would like to read, if that's possible.
All right.
Thank you. I was present at the golf tournament, and I was also in receipt of a code of conduct complaint. The term review was used at that time as well, so I wasn't really sure whether it was a complaint or review, arising from the same set of circumstances wherein it was alleged that I'd committed a violation of the code of conduct. The allegation struck me as being completely fabricated, as the alleged violation was nowhere to be found within the code of conduct procedure or bylaw, and yet it demanded that I behave in a specific manner. I felt obliged to respond to the Integrity Commissioner regarding the complaint and did so. Part of my response at that time was in regards to alleged comments, forming the substance of the complaint before us now. And as I indicated then in my reply, I do now, I did not hear Councillor Hanna make any of the alleged comments. To be quite frank, I felt that the code of conduct complaint against myself, while based in the same set of circumstances as the report before us, had been formulated and drafted in such a way to include myself, along with another council member, by alluding to a violation of the code of conduct rules which simply did not exist. The feeling I got at that time was that it was somehow retribution for doing something I'd felt morally and ethically compelled to undertake a week prior. As the substance of the complaint against me did not have any basis as a breach of the code of conduct, I came away believing that the complaint was being vexatious and that the allegation was made against me with malicious intent. I also came away with the opinion that the use of the code of conduct in this manner was a perversion of the intent of the code of conduct and was merely serving to control and silence members of council. With this in mind, I believe that the submission of the code of conduct complaint against Councillor Hanna as mine through the formal process code of conduct complaint Part B, formal complaint procedure, suffers the same imperfections as there were ample opportunities to address any of the concerns in a more, I think, believe responsible and respectful manner.
Thank you. Councillor Moore?
I too have a statement that I'd like to read,
Go ahead.
Mayor Allen. As one of the councillors also who was at the table that evening in which the conversation happened, I do take exception to the findings in this report for a couple of reasons. The complainant was not there, as we've heard, nor is he employed by the township any longer. I was named in the complaint as being present, but I still don't know exactly by who or what was said. I was never provided an opportunity to speak to that person or persons who apparently overheard an otherwise private conversation or reply to why I did not say anything to rebuke Councillor Hanna's statements. I tell you why I didn't say anything was because nothing was said and I didn't hear anything. I will reiterate again what I advised the Integrity Commissioner, that I did not hear Councillor Hanna state any of the things he's being accused of, and I also take exception to the statement that Councillor Hanna was holding court, as if to imply that we were sitting there hanging off every word he was speaking. Well, you can't have it both ways. Either I was sitting there listening so intently and focused, therefore could not help but to hear what he was saying, and then chose not to confirm or deny Councillor Hanna's experiences with staff, or we didn't say anything because nothing was said. And in this case, that is exactly what happened. We adopted this new code of conduct as a bar to measure ourselves against and to ensure our residents that we would act accordingly, with integrity, principled, and especially being respectful with each other and staff. This actually feels like the opposite. It feels like a public shaming right now. I feel strongly that the outgoing CAO, instead of speaking with Councillor Hanna, Councillor Cabral, or myself to help determine if there was any merit in this complaint, took the extreme approach by directly sending his concerns to the IC. Did he realize that in the very least, this would cause embarrassment, cause a huge distraction in the great work that this staff and council do on a daily basis? I'm not sure what the intention was. I'll never know because he's not here any longer. But my questions going forward, my questions going forward. Why is there not an internal process for when complaints come forward that would seem much more reasonable in an attempt to sort through the frivolous and nonsensical complaints such as this one? I'm not sure what this has cost the taxpayers of Springwater Township, but I strongly feel that it's unwarranted. This expense was not approved by council, endorsed by council, or supported by council. We did endorse working with Principals Integrity, but I assumed those investigations would be very serious and worthy of the expenses incurred. As a councillor, I have the duty and responsibility to request an investigation by the IC when a valid concern is brought to me or witnessed by me, for example, and especially if the behavior is so egregious that there is no other alternative. I feel like at the table that evening, if a statement was made that was so egregious and so outrageous and harmful that I would have had no choice but to hear it, then it just didn't happen. These allegations, I really feel strongly that are based on non-truths from someone who was sitting there, not drinking alcohol, and had spent the day with Councillor Hanna, who does not have any other agenda here but maintaining the great momentum that we have achieved as a council and to continue to represent the residents of Springwater as best I can. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments of council? Thank you. Okay, order, please. Anybody who hasn't made a comment yet wants to make a comment? Councillor Cabral, go ahead.
I just wanted to reiterate, there was a few items in the report, item number 9, where the complaint was authored by the CAO regarding his concerns about councillor conduct and alleged contraventions of the Code
Point
of
of order,
Conduct.
Mayor Allen?
Point of order.
Thank you. I do believe that we have all had an opportunity, and again, the intent is not to publicly shame anyone. There is a report. We are to make a decision on that report. We cannot, if we are going to take it in that direction, we are opening it up. We are initiating that. So if we are choosing to initiate that, then it's going to be a completely different evening here this evening. I think that it has remained professional, it has remained courteous, and I do believe that anything further could potentially take us in a direction that we, as we have discussed, do not want to go.
Okay. I am going to allow Principals Integrity to make a comment, because we have been making a lot of comments, and they should respond. But please, I would like to get to the recommendation and move on to other things. So Principals Integrity, go ahead.
I think some explanation is required, Mayor. Some of the comments were made, and we just want to clarify. With respect to the complainant himself, who's been identified in the report, it was the CAO who brought the complaint to us, and we had conversations to him. We never assumed or understood that he was present, and in fact, the reason why he brought the complaint forward on behalf of staff was that there was a concern of potential reprisals. We spoke directly with the staff members involved. In fact, as I mentioned at the outset, there were 3 respondents to the complaint at the outset. We received written responses to an inquiry from 2 members of council, and those matters were disposed of rather rapidly. With respect to the conversations themselves, I do want to say that though it was suggested this evening that the remarks were said in jest, that was not the perspective of the members of staff who were hearing them. They were concerned, and of course, staff are in a position where they cannot really respond directly to members of council. And so we heard from staff, we heard from people who could corroborate the information from staff, both another member of staff and a third party, and we had information from the other 2 members of council, which, to sum up, the members were unable to say one way or the other whether the comments were made, because they, in essence, said they tuned out. They weren't speaking to. They were not able to confirm or deny that we have that as a response. We tested that issue with both
Mayor Allen,
members
point
of
of order.
council.
I'm sorry, and I apologize for continuing to do this. As I've just expressed to members of council, I'm going to ask our presenters to have the exact same expectation within this. the information is before us, we have a report, we have a vote, and it's not, the information we're receiving is not going to change what's in the report this evening. So I don't see the point of this discussion. I would like to call the vote, please.
We don't have a mover and a seconder, so the recommendation is that the report of the Integrity Commissioner regarding the Code of Conduct complaint dated October 24th, 2019 be received, and that having been found to have breached the Township Springwater Code of Conduct, Councillor Hannah is hereby formally reprimanded, and that the report be posted on the Township of Springwater's website for public access. Is there a mover and a seconder with respect to this? Moved by Deputy Mayor Coghlan. Is there a seconder with respect to this? I'll second it. All those in favor?
Recorded vote, please.
A recorded vote has been requested by Councillor Cabral. When I state your name, please state yes or no. Councillor Cabral,
No.
Councillor Hannah,
No.
Councillor Chapman,
No.
no. Councillor Moore,
No.
Councillor Ritchie,
No.
Deputy Mayor Coghlan,
Yes?
Mayor Allen.
Yes.
That vote is lost.
Okay, thank you. I do want to reiterate that we do have great, committed, and competent staff with great spirit and great loyalty. So, question period. Question period is an opportunity for the public to come up and ask any questions with respect to an item on the agenda that has not yet been dealt with. Each person may speak for a maximum of 2 minutes. Question period will go to a maximum of 10 minutes. Anybody like to come forward and ask a question? Okay. Please make sure you're at the mic and state your name and address. Thank you.
Connie Speck, 47 Doran Road in Midhurst. I was quite interested in the item on wildfire protection and fighting here in the township, because I used to work for the Ministry of Natural Resources and was involved in things like prescribed burn and being close to actual forest fires. And I'm really hoping somehow we can get the province back involved. And I say that because I know the full costs of hell attack or aircraft attack, which is sometimes the only way to deal with forest fire. You do not want it to spread to structures. We're seeing an example in California of what can happen. And here in Ontario, we may think that's far away, but we have woods that are full of what, as forestry people, we call fuel. It's anything that's on the ground that can burn. And so if there's any way at all, I would just ask our township to make a request, if we can, to the provincial government that they at least make aircraft, if not ground personnel, available, because these people fight forest fires all the time. And I would not want to see mainly volunteer firemen trying to fight in those conditions. I've been close to forest fires, and they're really, really scary, and they can really move fast. And I would not want to lose any of our personnel or any of our staff. So that my question tonight is, would we consider asking the province at least to provide that kind of support to us, even though we're getting involved in this wildfire agreement?
Okay, I thank you for the question, and we will look into that further.
Okay.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening, councillors. I did have a bunch of questions on 4.3, but that's done right now. Apart from one question that was asked and wasn't answered, I wouldn't mind just getting an answer for that. And that would be through you, Mayor, to Mr. Schmidt there, as to how much this actual accusation cost the township.
CEO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to the public, if you will. I don't know at this stage, to be honest with you. I haven't received an invoice for this, so I can't comment on that at this stage. I don't know what the cost is.
So it seems like we're entering into various agreements with no idea as to how much it's going to cost us. Is that right?
No, we're not entering into agreements, but it's dependent upon the amount of time that was spent, and we haven't received that detail as yet.
Is it likely to be more or less than $5,000?
I think we've answered the question as best we can.
I don't think you did.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
First off, I have my name's Steve Yerkew, 21 years lived in Springwater. Well, I'd get in trouble for that. I have a comment to make with regards to and through Mr. Mayor to the Deputy Mayor. There's no attack here, it's just some personal issues that I dealt with the same accuser, and my question would come at the end, if that's okay.
So what's your question concerning, please?
It's concerning the allegations against Mr. Hanna.
Well, we have dealt with that matter, and so we're not going back to deal with that. If you have
But
a
am I not
question-
allowed to ask a question?
As I said at the beginning of the question period, if you have a question on an item future on the agenda, then we're not going to be debating that which.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, then after what I was going to say, why is the accuser not here? Why is the accuser not present?
As I say, we're not getting into further details with respect to that. Do you have a question with respect to an item?
That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Next.
Bill French, 3612 Grenfell Road. And I just have a broad kind of comment question, because I'm still confused, on the code of conduct and not the specific allegations that you dealt with tonight. But typically in a democratic system, laws such as the code of conduct are created by the legislative body, which in this case is Springwater Council. You create bylaws all the time. Why did the township allow the judicial or adjudicative body, in this case the Integrity Commissioner, to author the code of conduct that far exceeds the requirements under the provincial legislation, which I believe is now being used as a weapon of intimidation? Why did the council not develop your own as was started in the last term of council? Doesn't the process itself now lack integrity by having the Integrity Commissioner act as the legislator, the judge, and jury in a matter that costs the township thousands of dollars for something that does not add $1 of value or protect the well-being of the residents of Springwater? So I'd just be curious if there's any comment on
Well,
that.
as I think you're aware, the legislation with respect to having to have a code of conduct changed over the last, has progressed such that we did have to have a code of conduct. We had extensive meetings in council, discussions, and did vote as a council on the code of conduct. So that which exists is a result of all of that work.
I have another short question, but in case someone else has, I'd let them come forward
Councillor Hanna,
first.
did you?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Just for clarification too, the province did decide we had to have a code of conduct, but it only required us to have 4 rules. We adopted 31 pages, more than the 4 rules.
Yes, after several sessions and a vote of council, we did, yes. Yes, sir.
My name's Bob Meadows, and just for clarification, I'm here as a resident, or not a resident of this township, but as, I'm not part of council, okay? I'm here as a person.
Can
No,
you
no.
give us your address, please?
My name is Bob Meadows, 4481 Concession Road 2, Agila, and I'd like to speak on item 4.3 and 4.2 of the agenda. especially with comments with regards to 4.3. Item 5.
Bob.
Yeah,
Mr.
I know the
Measures,
report.
Mr. Measures, we're not going back and dealing with that.
I know, this
the
is
same
a
thing.
question I have for all of you on council, though.
Okay,
Okay? And it's with regards to the report that came forward, there was a comment in there that's very, very disturbing, and it should be disturbing for every single person sitting on this council and other council chambers. Because you can, a comment can be brought forward from anybody or anything. And that comment could have real impacts on you as a person in the community. And this is what the comment was on item number 5 that really, really disturbs me.
excuse me, we're not going to get into the report. You made your point.
Point of order, please.
Just conclude on the point, please.
Okay, and that's what I'm doing. And it says here, Principals Integrity Report states, our role differs from other adjudicators whose responsibilities generally focus on making findings of fact and fault. While that is a necessary component when allegations are made, it is not the only component. So if they're not looking for factual information, what exactly did the taxpayer pay for if not looking for facts and truth? Does this comment explain the limited scope of this investigation and other investigations that are being brought forward by integrity commissioners? Every single one of you has a responsibility to the taxpayers. And to have a comment like that in a report brought forward by an integrity commissioner investigating somebody, to me is unconscionable. I just can't believe they put that statement in the report, and I just wanted to make you aware of that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Any other questions? We're almost done. Yes, one more.
Good evening, John Spring, 2438 County Road 92, Elmville, Ontario. I just wanted to make a statement saying that the taxpayers of Springwater Township have absolutely no stomach for more cost with integrity commissioners, especially from when comments that are private are made and were taken out of context and quite frankly, very shallow, hard to prove. The money that was spent on integrity commissioners and investigations would go a long way towards projects in Springwater Township. We've seen this happen in the past, and the council should be made aware that taxpayers in Springwater have had it with the cost that are associated with this, I'd like to say, witch hunt. Thank you very much.
Okay, moving on to item 6.1, minutes of council. Can I have a mover and seconder to get this? Councillor Moore, Councillor Chapman. That the minutes of council listed herein be approved as presented. The minutes of regular meeting of council, October 16, 2019. Any questions with respect to these? All those in favor? Carried. Item 6.2 is minutes of the boards and committees and organizations. May I have a mover and a second to get this on the table, please? Councillor Moore and Councillor Chapman. Any of these like to be discussed? The motion is that the minutes of the boards and committees and other organizations listed herein be received as information. Committee of Adjustment meeting of September 25, 2019. The minutes of the Economic Development Advisory Committee meeting of August 29, 2019, and the minutes of the Heritage Advisory Committee, September 24, 2019. All those in favor? Carried. Correspondence, item 7. There are 3 items. Any discussion with respect to these? Councillor Cabral?
Severn Sound Environmental Association, just to comment on that particular report.
Go ahead, please.
I had a good look at it there, and I was actually very, very impressed with the amount of information that was provided there, amount of events that they hosted, amount of inspections that they did, and I'm thinking back, I don't know what the amount was, I think it was $7,500, and if that's what we gave them, we sure got a lot of bang for our buck.
Thank you. I do remind you that there's an open house tomorrow that we're all invited to at Horseshoe Valley with the Severn Sound Environmental Association. Any other, Councillor Hanna?
7.1.3, the Legion.
Yes. Go ahead.
There's a question there for some funding to help support the Ontario Command, Legion's 7th Annual Military Service for $575. Being that this is obviously the month where we remember our veterans and so on, I would like to see if there's any support on council to make a donation to support that request.
I support that. Any, yep. Okay, we're going to pull it, and we'll accept the other ones first, and then we'll just do a quick... So, a mover and a seconder, Councillor Hanna and Councillor Chapman. The correspondence and information items listed herein be received as information. County of Simcoe North Elmvale Trail Gap, notice of study, commencement of Public Information Center, Severn Sound Environmental Association third quarter report, Ontario Command Legion's 7th Annual Military Services Recognition Book, request for donation, and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario Regional Government Review announcement with the exception of item 3 to be dealt with separately. All those in favor? Carried. So we'll just do, and with respect to item 3, mover is Hannah, seconder is, please, Councillor Cabral. That the correspondence and information items listed herein be received as information. Well, no. Okay, and the Ontario Command's Legion's 7th Annual Military Service Recognition Book request for donation. All those in favor? No, I don't. So we're just, so the motion now before is amended as follows, sorry. And that council, seconded by Deputy Mayor Coghlan, and that council hereby advertise in the 7th Military Service Recognition Book at a cost of $570 plus applicable taxes. All those in favor? Carried. Action reports. But first we need to deal with the motion as amended, that the correspondence and information items listed herein be received as information. The Ontario Command Legion's 7th Annual Military Service Recognition Book, request for donation, and the council hereby advertise in the 7th Military Service Recognition Book at a cost of $570 plus applicable taxes. All those in favor? Carried. Action reports 8.2 through to 8.6. Comments or we need a mover and seconder to get on the floor. Councillor Cabral and Councillor Moore. Who would like to pull? Yes, Councillor Cabral.
I'd like to pull 8.3 Animal Control Bylaw Update.
Okay. And anybody else? 8.3. So we are looking at the action reports 8.2 through to 8.6 be received and that the recommendations contained therein be approved. 8.2 being the pre-consultation process township official plan amendment. 8.4 telecommunications tower proposal 2632 Vespra Valley Road. 8.5 cemetery price list update. 8.6 OPP lease agreement Fire Station 3 2303 Ronald Road. With the exception of item 8.3 to be dealt with separately. All those in favor? Carried. 8.3, Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Thank you, Mayor Allen. I just had some comments with respect to the review. I know that it speaks about lost revenues and a few other things, but I believe the lost revenues were due to a lifetime dog tag thing, which probably meant that everybody who'd previously been buying them year to year arranged to buy them that year. But a couple of the things that I actually had some trouble with is I'm having some difficulty with the changing of vicious to dangerous, I believe, or yes, dangerous dog to vicious dog. And the reason I bring that up is Dog Owners Liability Act is already in existence, and it deals with some of the things that appear to now be looking to be incorporated into our own bylaw here. And I have some concerns with that because the legislation's already in place provincially to deal with those specific things. And when we look at the legislation itself with respect to proceedings against a dog owner under the Dog Owners Liability Act, municipal bylaw enforcement officers are included in that. And additionally, they are in a position to issue tickets under the, or summonses under the Part 1 of the Provincial Offences Act, as well as Part 3. And I see it as a duplication, and I'm wondering if it's something that should be reviewed a little bit more carefully. It looked like there's some other jurisdictions that are doing the same thing, but my biggest concern is that when the court has an application before them, they then are the ones who make orders for keeping your dog locked up, arranging for a muzzle, and these are court-ordered sanctions, whereas in our bylaw, it looks like, based on a declaration from the bylaw enforcement officer, which is based on a complaint, that we are now going to be imposing these specific sanctions against dog owners. And I don't know if that's something that a bylaw should entail, because the courts are already in a position to do it. It's kind of like doing something and forcing someone to adhere to a condition regarding their dog, which normally wouldn't happen until the courts had already heard the charge before them, and then the judge, based on the information, would create that order. So I have some difficulty with the way this has been brought forth, in the sense that the Dog Owners Liability Act already exists. Our bylaw enforcement officers are able to access that when they need to. And I also question whether or not our bylaw enforcement officers are the appropriate agency to be dealing with vicious dogs or dangerous dogs and dogs who actually bite people. I think that's more of a police issue, and the police should be laying those charges. And I kind of think that maybe this particular aspect with those, I forget what they're called, bear with me just a second, referring it to a dangerous dog notice to muzzle order, and the other one is called, I guess it's a different form for restraining a dog, but I really believe that the dangerous dogs and the biting, that should be something the police should be tending to. I don't think it's something that our bylaw enforcement officers should be looking at.
Okay, Director Ippolito, do you have comments with respect to the points made by Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Cabral. There is a couple things, just you touched upon a couple of points in our review process we considered. In terms of the DOLA, or the dangerous to animals, and responding to vicious animals at that, what we have found is that the police are not actually responding to that. Where we have had situations where they actually referring over to the township for further investigation and enforcement issues. So we would love it if the police would actually investigate and follow through on DOLA-related matters. However, our experience has been that is not the case, and that's not what's happening.
Follow on?
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, through Mayor Allen to Director Ippolito. That strikes me as a bit of a real concern for us, because I also know that when it comes down to volunteer firefighters, I often see them directing traffic. And to be quite honest with you, in an emergency situation, firefighters should be doing that. They can be doing that. They're authorized to do that. But traffic control is generally the mandate of the policing service. And I know that we're paying for the police to do certain things. I think maybe what we should be doing is having a meeting with them and saying, you need to start undertaking to do your role in our community and not just pass it back over to bylaw. Because I'd like to know what other jurisdictions are doing. I'd like to know what the city of Barrie does when a dog complaint comes in and a child's been bitten. I don't really think it's a bylaw enforcement issue, and I really take exception to the fact that they're referring it back to bylaw so that we can do the investigation when we're already spending money on law enforcement, and they seem to be now turning around and saying, well, we're too busy or it's not important enough. These people who are contacting the police, they're also expecting the police to do what they're supposed to be doing and what their mandate is. I think it's unreasonable for the police to then turn around and say, contact your local bylaw enforcement officer and let them look after it. Because now it seems to me that we're changing our bylaw so that we can address the shortcomings of the police service.
Okay, we will, thank you. We will bring that up in our next police meeting. I see CAO Schmidt making notes, and we're always looking for topics to discuss, and that'll be one of them. Councillor Hanna?
Thank you, Mayor. I do agree with Councillor Cabral, and just through to the director, I know we'll have this conversation. This is going to be a public meeting, come back to us, but just for the record, the licensing for cats was $40, and the reason that was brought in was to encourage people to get their cat chipped, because if you got your cat chipped, you only had to pay for it one time. The same as for dogs, which was $50. And again, to get the dog chipped, you only have to pay for it one time. The reason that was brought in, as you know, I believe it was in the month of December, we got a bill for cats being taken to Barrie for $12,000. So to help reduce that cost, getting the animals chipped, hopefully the owner of the animal would be identified quickly and would have saved us all those costs. So that was the reason for doing that. So I'll be looking for what we're going to do if we have to start paying these increased costs again, because people are not motivated to get their dog or cat chipped. So I just wanted to share that with you now.
Thank you. Okay, can I have a mover and a seconder to get the report from the Senior Municipal Law Enforcement Officer, Councillor Moore and Councillor Ritchie, that the report from the Senior Municipal Law Enforcement Officer regarding the draft Canine Control Bylaw public consultation dated November 6, 2019 be received, and the public consultation for updating the Canine Control Bylaw be conducted for a period of 30 days, and that the final report outlining the public comments received and a draft updated Canine Control Bylaw be presented to Council at a future meeting. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, moving on to 9.1, information reports. I have a mover and a seconder to get those on the table, please. Deputy Mayor Coghlan, Councillor Cabral. Which of these would we like to have pulled? Councillor Hanna?
I just have a question, excuse me, please, on 9.5, 9.1.5, sorry.
5, yes, any others to be pulled? Deputy Mayor Coghlan?
Sorry. I was going to say 9.4 for Councillor Cabral here.
And 3 as well, please.
4 and 3? We're pulling those? Pulling those, right? Okay, but
Apologize, Mayor Allen. We don't need to pull number 3. Just a couple of questions on
Okay.
it, if that's possible.
all right, we'll start with 5, sub 5. Councillor Hanna, question?
Thank you. This is to do with the Curry, the way I read the report. It's some tree clearing and so on. I just want confirmation from our Director of Planning that this is gone through the OMB and that we as council are just approving the rezoning or whatever information we can get.
Director Spagnol?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, through you to Councillor Hanna. Councillor Hanna is correct. The designations for the property were established through the OMB process. OMB now is LPAT, and the zoning is simply to reflect the findings and the results of the environmental work that was completed through that process to allow for some additional tree clearing on the site.
Okay, Councillor Cabral, item 3.
Yes, thank you. Just with reference to bylaw enforcement officers responding to burning complaints, I think the figure was 57% of the time the officers weren't on duty, and that they were ill-equipped to deal with maybe putting fires out. But I'm just wondering whether or not that might be still something that could be considered, given the fact that if they are available and the information's come in that someone just burning that doesn't have a burn permit, I think there's still an opportunity for them to attend to those. That's all. Thank you.
Any comments, Director Ippolito, on that?
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Cabral. And we did have discussions with the fire department on that. Just right now, most of the calls are coming through the call center, through 911 services. However, if there was a situation where we were asked, we got a call from Deputy Fire Chief saying, can you go attend this? We had a call last night regarding someone burning. We would absolutely we'd be receptive for it. It'll be more of a non-emergency situation in this particular case, but however, most of what we're seeing, at least in the calls that are coming through, have been, they're getting a call, let's go, type of thing.
Okay, so the, Councillor Hanna?
Thank you. Just to follow up on that, I thought it was a very good report. I initiated the question originally because it was my understanding that burn without permits, we were sending a fire apparatus, and that didn't seem to make a lot of sense just to go and tell somebody you're going to get a summons for not having a burning permit. So I hope that some way we can still have both units work together.
Okay, CAO Schmidt has taken due note of that, and so the motion is that the report items listed herein be received as information. Number 1, bylaw activity report, August 2019. Bylaw activity report, September 2019. Bylaw enforcement officer responding to burning complaints. Number 5, ZB 219-011, Alex Curry Motors. Number 6, check register, January to September 2019. Number 7, building permit summary report, September 2019, with the exception of item 4 to be dealt with separately. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, so we're, can we have a mover and seconder? We have Cabral is moving and seconded for the report, sub 4 to get on the table, please. Deputy Mayor Coghlan. So potential cost to the hard surface Floss Road 10 West. Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. First, I'd like to say it was a good report. It certainly itemized everything clearly. And I appreciate the fact that it was brought back before us, and thank Director Coleman for her work on it. I do have an amendment to the motion that's going to be put forth. I think everybody knows from past council meetings my position on it, and at our last council meeting, made a motion to try and move forward with it, and I'd simply like to put it back before council for a vote. Thank you.
And that amendment is?
That the motion now before council be amended as follows: that the capital project 2019-26 for the completion of the gravel conversion to hardtop of Floss Road 10 from County Road 27 to Crosland Road, which is County Road 29, in the amount of $383,452.43 be approved, and that funding be provided from the additional gas tax funds.
And a seconder on that? Councillor Ritchie. Discussion. Yes, Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I totally understand that we need this road done and that we took it out of the budget or the 6-year plan. I still think that it should be going into the next budget, which is a couple weeks down the road.
Thank you. The comments? Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. And in discussion with other members of council, it might be beneficial to us as a council to have, as we did earlier today, a session about bylaw, to have one with our Public Works Department, with our Asset Management Coordinator, with our Roads Needs Study, so that we can get a really good idea of what the conversion schedule is moving forward, so that we can have a strategic plan for the entire municipality, so that we're not continually dealing with one-off situations here. I do agree with Councillor Chapman that I'm happy to deal with this at budget time, but I'm curious if such a information or education session would be beneficial.
Other comments? I agree, as I stated in the previous meeting, that I think these major capital items, that two of which we're considering tonight, should be part of the budget process, which is going to be, we're going to be in-depth reviewing in the next month. So I think the monies that we have that we're looking at here have to be merged in with all monies. I mean, we have one pot of money. You can't separate, you shouldn't separate, in my opinion. I don't think it's fiscally prudent to separate the gas tax money to the side when we don't know what our total needs are from an operating and capital perspective until we go through the budget. So I'm not necessarily against this. I just think it's premature to cast it in stone at this time without the fulsome information of a total budget. Yes, Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I disagree. I think this gas tax fund that we received is a one-time only fund for this year only. It was intended for infrastructure. We should use it for infrastructure and not combine it with money in our budget. We already know what we have. This particular project was, in my opinion, dropped off the budget last year. I was unaware of it. I voted for it. I was unaware that I voted at the time to not move forward with this project. And so because of that, we have this money right now, and I'd like to use it. I'd like to put it to good use, and I think that you've been waiting a very long time, and so I fully support it.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Ritchie?
I too, along with Councillor Moore, agree that this thing got dropped off the edge of the earth and replaced with, well, it just got dropped off. So I think, given the history behind this and where we are right now, the gas tax, it's here before us. I support this 100%, and let's show these farmers out here that we're going to stand behind them and not in front of them. So I support it 100%. This should have been done a long time ago. We wouldn't be sitting here arguing over this. Not arguing, but discussion. So I support it 100%.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, and through you to, I guess, CAO Schmidt, the additional gas tax fund. I'm sorry, I just want to clarify that there's an expiration date. We have to spend it this year, or is this money that we've received and we have the ability to spend it at will?
CAO Schmidt?
Through Mr. Mayor to Deputy Mayor Coughlin. Typically, we have an annual report that we have to report back to the province on how the gas tax monies were spent. With that said, there's no necessary specification as to when these funds have to be spent. It is typically, we have typically spent gas tax monies on an annual basis, not necessarily all the funds that we've been allocated every year. But again, there is no specific specification as to when these funds have to be spent.
Thank you. And I guess as a statement, I do understand that this was at one point part of a 6-year capital plan or a 10-year capital plan. There are many projects, capital, that are sitting out there for identified, for example, the Grenfell Hall sits there with $1 million coming to it. So I understand that when people see things in a plan, there may be a perception that, oh, perfect, I'm going to get that hall in this year. But it's a working document. It's something that we use to move. So when a decision was made by previous councils to take this out of the 6-year capital plan, I'm not of the perception that it was a promise. I think that councils do need to look at all capital plans as they move forward. It's not something that I wouldn't support during budget, but it's the process that it's coming forward is not something I can do.
Okay, okay, Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just in respect of that, this was not, gravel road conversions were not dropped by council. The 10-year plan became the 10-year plan when the last year, 2019, of the 6-year plan ended, and those were dropped before it came before council for us to approve the 10-year plan, and unfortunately, some of us didn't know that they'd been dropped, so that's why when it came back again, and it's been ongoing. In the spring, we've discussed it. It's been ongoing, and I'm just wanted to clarify that it wasn't council that dropped it. They were removed from the 10-year capital plan, but it wasn't something that was directed by council.
Okay, Councillor Hanna?
Thank you. It's a good report. It needs to be done. We're going to do it eventually. We have the money now, so I support, let's just get it done.
Okay, we're going to the vote then. Everybody aware of the motion? Okay.
Recorded vote, please.
Okay, recorded vote. Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, and just for clarification before it does, is there an existing resolution of council with regards to conversion? Through you to Clerk Chaperone then?
Clerk Chaperone?
For clarification, do you mean conversion of gravel roads in general or specifically for this project?
Not specific to this, but I have all the resolutions for that one, but is there an overarching resolution of Springwater, the corporation, with regards to the conversion? Because I just need to know if that exists or not.
That is something I would have to look into.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Cabral.
Thank you. If you'll recall, back in the spring, I did significant research, and gravel road conversions were something that council had tried to implement to do. And a report was authored by then Public Works Director, Mr. Sochak, with respect to the amount of money that was available for the capital projects, because there were some bridges that needed to be repaired. And he at that time had indicated that gravel road conversions might not go forward. Council never came back and did anything with that, and it was a year or two later that there were other gravel road conversions done by township after that report had gone in.
Okay, so I'm calling the vote. Oh, it's a recorded vote.
A recorded vote was requested by Councillor Cabral. When I state your name, please state yes or no, and this is for the amendment. Councillor Cabral?
Yes.
Councillor Hanna?
Yes.
Councillor Chapman?
No.
Councillor Moore?
Yes.
Councillor Ritchie?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
No.
Mayor Allen?
No.
The amendment is carried.
Moved by Cabral, seconded by Coughlin. That the report items listed herein be received as information, potential cost to hard surface Floss Road 10 West, and that the capital project 21926 for the completion of the gravel conversion to hardtop of Floss Road 10 from County Road 27 to Crossland Road in the amount of 383,452.43 be approved, and that funding be provided from the additional gas tax funds. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, verbal reports. Councillor Ritchie?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Through the director, can you explain to this council and these people here tonight when this plan on going forward? Would it be this year?
Director Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor Allen, through you to Councillor Ritchie. We could prepare a tender which could go to market in the coming weeks. We would have to advertise that for 35 days, so we would be into the middle of December. So I would suspect that the weather at that time wouldn't be conducive to hard surfacing a road, so we would be looking at completion as early as possible in the spring.
Follow on.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. So while we're waiting during this process, if this road, and I would ask maybe any input from the people that live on there, and as well as Councillor Cabral, if that road needs to have the shoulders cut down, or if there's any ditching to be done, so that everything's all rolled into it again. And if it exceeds that amount of money, we can address that in the following budget coming up here starting next month. And that we're ready to go for the springtime.
Thank you,
So I
Councillor.
just want to mention that.
Thank you. Verbal reports, item 10, 10.1 and 10.2. Director Spagnell, official plan update and economic development update.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just first, I'd like to provide just an update on events that occurred today regarding LPAT. The Simcoe County Environmental Resource Recovery Center item was brought before LPAT today for a case management conference. The original purpose of the case management conference was for parties to identify themselves. The result of that conference was the requirement for a conference call to identify potential dates for follow-up case management conferences, so an additional hearing to go over issues lists and to bring forward the matters to determine what the scope of each individual appeal or each hearing might entail, to determine whether or not those items will be consolidated under one appeal or whether or not they will be dealt with under two separate hearing processes. So the effect of the meeting was really that there will be additional meetings to try to establish the procedural order and the process to move forward to get to hearings in the future. The key dates to identify is the conference call is to take place on December, Friday the 13th. That was actually a topic of conversation. And the expectation is that the additional case management conferences might occur in February or March of 2020, with the expectation to try to land on potential mediation or hearing dates in late 2020. I'd like to also let anybody who's listening in and the audience know that tomorrow from 6 to 8 p.m. there will be a public open house regarding backyard chickens here at the Administration Center. People are invited to come and get some information, provide their comments. In addition to that, there was a notice that was issued in the Springwater News and as part of the link, and also sent out via internet. I believe it was on our township website as well, that the township will be hosting an open house on November 14th from 7 p.m. till 9 p.m. here at the Administration Center with respect to the official plan review and update process. The purpose of this open house is to provide for informal conversation and to provide information to any interested stakeholders or residents, and also to provide an opportunity for any participants to come in and submit their comments through a standard form that staff will provide. Following that, there is also a notice that has been sent out with respect to the statutory public meeting for the official plan review process. That is scheduled to take place as a special council meeting on December 5th, from starting at 6:30, where there will be information boards, and at which point the consultant working on the official plan review will provide a presentation to council, and that will be the formal kickoff of the official plan review process under the statutory requirements of the Planning Act. And then lastly, there is an agricultural forum that's scheduled to take place on November 28th, 10 a.m. in Elmville, and that covers off one of the last forums that we'll be doing as part of the economic development initiatives for 2019.
Thank you, Director. Deputy Mayor Coghlan, county update.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. On November 14th, also the county will be hosting the grand opening for the Elmville Health and Emergency Services Center. So that's at 11 a.m. on Thursday the 14th. And aside from that, nothing, there'll be lots more after everything begins tomorrow. We have our first budget session, so aside from that, nothing else to report.
Thank you. I can just add to that. I was in a governance meeting this week, Striking Committee and Governance. And obviously the regional government review was one of the items of discussion. And our people are aware that the provincial government has decided not to pursue a top-down approach with respect to mandating or bringing about changes in the municipalities that they were studying. But they did encourage continuation of initiatives that were discussed as part of this exercise. So a motion is coming before County Council that further governance committee and regional governance review task force meetings be scheduled to continue discussions related to the recommendations brought forward by the two committees regarding governance and service rationalization. In Simcoe County, we created these two committees, one looking at regional, the governance committee, which I sat on, and the regional governance review task force, which Deputy Mayor Coughlin sat on. They are going to be reconvening to pick up the recommendations and discussions and further those and bring them forward to County Council so that we continue some momentum there. Municipal updates. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. The Safe Station training and menacing will happen November 19th from 7 to 9, same night as their CRA meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I'm not sure if you were going to speak to this, but the town hall that will be happening in Grenfell, do you want me to mention it now?
Yes, please do.
So the township is hosting a town hall for Ward 4. That's going to take place November 21st at the Grenfell United Church in the hall. It's at 7 o'clock. They're planning to have the directors present to talk about projects that are happening or will be happening in our ward. You will be getting, I think, official invites in the mail, but just so that you know, everybody will be there. You can ask questions and a small presentation, I think. Right, CAO Schmidt? Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just for anyone who might be interested, and certainly any businesses that are in the Elmvale area or in Springwater that would like to come out, the BIA, Business Improvement Area in Elmvale, is having their annual general meeting on Tuesday, November the 19th at 5:15. The only other thing, I just wanted to put another pitch in for the tree lighting ceremony in Elmvale, 29th of November. I believe that's the right date for us. I know someone else is having a tree lighting
Yes.
ceremony. Am I
Yeah.
got them mixed up?
No, I was just going to say, certainly in the Springwater link, all the dates for the tree lightings and the sleigh rides in the different communities are detailed there, and they're certainly detailed on the website. So they'll be coming up in late November, early December. So I encourage people to look at those and come out and attend. They're fun events.
Mayor Allen, will you speak to the CP holiday train?
CP Holiday Train is coming forward 2 weeks this Friday, I think, 29th, I believe. So it's the same sort of thing. The CP Holiday Train pulls in, lots of people there. We'll be serving hot chocolate, we being the Springwater, and marshmallows, and there'll be a great band on it. There are 2 tickets which are available for a train ride, and we're going to be there's a bit of a contest with the staff that CEO Schmidt's organizing. So hopefully come out to that. It's always a fun event. Okay, any other municipal updates? Moving on to 11.1, notice of motion. We need a seconder. There's a notice of motion by Councillor Ritchie. We need a seconder to get that on the table. Councillor Moore. And that the motion is, be it resolved that this council direct staff finance department to set aside $75,000 for 2018 year plus $75,000 for 2019 year totaling $150,000 to be set aside and to be used towards the construction of a new steel roof covering the Phelpston Rink on or before the 4th year of this term of council, and that this be funded from the additional gas tax funds. I'll turn it over to Councillor Ritchie to say anything further on that before we...
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I think it speaks for itself. I spoke at length when I first brought this forward. I know that there were some concerns. There's a small group of us, and in order for us to obtain things, we, in order to get the boards, we moved, and with the help of our past council and our former mayor, that we set aside so much money a year. And then we built on that until we had enough funds to move forward with the construction. So that's why I took that same approach again with the roof. I know it's scheduled to go on 2025, but this term ends 2022. So if we set so much money aside, this is gas tax funds. That's why I'm bringing this to council's attention. It got missed last year, so that's why I'm asking for last year and asking for this year, and then we can build on that starting next year. Whatever way it comes, we'll deal with that when the time comes. So I'm asking council to join me in getting this started and getting this money set aside. And I will ask for a recorded vote too as well. Thank you.
Questions, discussion? Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. My concern is all the other pavilions within our township. They all had to fundraise a certain amount of money to build theirs. Grenfell did, Minisink did, Midhurst did. So I'm trying to understand why Phelpston should have it paid for fully. We can use DC funding if there is some percentage come from the township and a percentage come to fundraising like all other hall boards fundraise for their pavilion.
Councillor Hanna?
Question, thank you, through, I guess, to the Director of Finance. After we pay for the improvement to Road Frost 10 from the gas tax, how much money would there be left? Would there be enough left to cover this?
CEO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Hanna. So there's approximately $189,000 that are remaining in those additional gas tax funds that would cover this.
Deputy Mayor? Yes, follow on.
Thank you. Then could I ask if Councillor Ritchie would consider a friendly amendment to this to suggest that any additional funds that are left over could be used to pave the parking lot at the Midhurst Pavilion?
I'll support that, yes.
Deputy Mayor Coghlan?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Again, as we are approaching budget, this project does exist in our capital plan. I do know that the Phelpston Hall Board is very receptive and appreciative of the pavilion that was just built in Phelpston. To my understanding, DC funding is only applicable where the existing service does not. So because they already have a pavilion, we can't now use DCs for a pavilion. I'm also curious, and I guess this would be just a friendly amendment, the years 2018 and 2019 are not applicable in budgeting, so I don't understand how we would put money aside in those. So I do believe there needs to be some rewording in that. I've spoken to different residents in Phelpston, and I do believe that there is a process. Their hall board has been before our council before. They're excited to do it again. Their intention, from what I understand, is to go through RAC and then to council. So I think the process that we have existing is something that is respected by the residents. This project does exist in the capital plan. And like Councillor Hanna just pushed out, that we have 7 communities that we need to service. And I think taking a look at recreation as a whole before we continue to put roofs or paved parking lots, there needs to be a bigger picture taken a look at. Thank you.
Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I do sit on the RAC committee, and we did go over some things that have maybe fallen through the waistline, where the CRAs are not approaching them to approach for projects like this where that was the way before. They would approach RAC would approach council, or tell them how to do a delegation. Going forward, I just think we need to have some kind of something in place for all hall boards, because what if Midhurst wants something? Are we going to pay for it out of some kind of money budget? Grenfell, Minnesing's looking for things, Aunt Mills is looking for things, and now I have to go back to them and say, no, you have to fundraise, when Phelpston didn't fundraise at all.
Clerk Chaperon.
Thank you. For Councillor Hannah's request, it cannot be a friendly amendment as it changes the intent of the motion. Friendly amendments are just for very minor adjustments to a motion. So his request would have to be an amendment to Councillor Ritchie's notice of motion.
Okay, so other comments? Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, and I guess through you to CAO Schmidt, the resolution in front of us says that we're putting 75,000 in 2018 and 75,000 for 2019. I don't know if we just need to change the dates as per Councilor Ritchie, but I don't understand how that's even possible to do.
CAO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Deputy Mayor Coughlin. I don't want to speak on behalf of Councillor Ritchie, but I believe the intent is, and I stand to be corrected, I believe the intent is that in lieu of not having put money aside for those 2 years in previous budgets, the intent is that those allocations would now come forward in one lump sum in 2020, I guess, or 2019. I believe that's your intent, right?
Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I think that money that is left over now, Councillor Ritchie, is not earmarked for anything. Would it be prudent to ask the hall board there or the RAC there to come to do a presentation for us? I'd like to know what kind of community involvement they've got there, what support they have there that would warrant spending this much money. And the money's still there, so it's not like it's going anywhere. Thank you.
So the motion has to be in the form of an amendment, as Clerk Chaperon just said, and that amendment would read that the motion before council be amended to and add that the remaining additional gas tax funds be used to pave the parking lot at the Midhurst Pavilion. Moved by Hannah, seconded by? Okay.
Mayor, I just have a question.
Seconded by Councillor Cabral. Okay. Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you. If memory serves me, the parking lot to be paved was part of a report from that we, as a council, has received, and then we voted against that. That project was part of something that we chose not to do, which is a existing resolution of this council. So would we not then have to pull the existing resolution and reconsider that motion rather than voting on the exact same project again?
Clerk Chaperon is just checking out something with respect to that.
Sorry, was it not part of the list that
Yes,
I believe it was Councillor Ritchie had removed? Yeah.
Clerk Chaperon.
Thank you. So that project was included in a previous report to council regarding the additional gas tax funds, but there was never, that motion was never turned into a resolution to be finalized. It was referred back to staff for further information on one specific project. So there was never, it was never finalized, which means that this would not be, there would be nothing to reconsider.
Okay, and thank you. So is there an opportunity then, now that this is back at our table, to understand where that went to and when it's coming back to us? Because if we sent it for additional to be referred, what other information are we looking for?
I think, CEO Schmidt, I was going to ask the question. My understanding is for those things that were on that report, those were being accumulated to be reviewed at budget time as possible capital expenditures, along with other items that may have been submitted to you by certain councillors for capital wishes in different communities. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to members of council. That is correct. The idea is that staff is currently in the process of finalizing the capital and operating budgets for 2020 or the draft, and those items would be considered as part of the additional gas tax monies and or part of the 10-year capital plan. And again, I would state that, again, a decision could be made tonight, and one has been made, and the idea is that you don't know, and I don't know, to be honest with you, what's going to be coming forward on November 20th with respect to the priorities and pressures that this township is going to face as it relates to capital. So I would just throw that out there as a caution to say, use the funds now, and there may be no other funds to deal with some of the other priorities that this township is facing, which could be bigger pressures than what we're talking about tonight.
Thank you. And it's for that reason that I won't be able to support this. I do support the process. I think Phelpston should come forward the way the other communities have come forward with such projects, as was alluded to by Councillor Chapman. And I think if we're committing monies more than what we've done already, at this point in time, it really potentially hamstrings us in the budget process. And so I will want to wait until that process to review this. Other comments? Councillor Ritchie?
I just want to comment, I go to the Hillsdale Rec Committee, I go to the Phelpston Rec Committee, they sit in my ward. I've helped shovel these rinks off in a snowstorm and listen to them. So I'm speaking, I'm their councillor and I'm speaking. I had to do something right. I got acclaimed last year, so I'm here to walk the walk and talk the talk. And I know what we're after. I know what we're up against. I welcome you guys to come out and help us in the middle of a snowstorm there this winter. But we need this. We need to move forward with this without more delay, without more people coming. This was newfound money. And we're going to get a road fixed, and we can start on getting a roof put over something that needs badly done, and I speak on their behalf. Thank you, and I ask for your support.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I totally understand. We even have a roof in Minnesing. We still shovel. It's the way the snow blows in. And I did go to our CEO Smith about our wish list, and he did say that Ant Mills and Minnesing, with the project that we want to go forth with, would be maybe partly DC funding, partly township funding, and the rest would be fundraising, and that's what the CRAs are for, is to fundraise for those items. So I'm just wondering why Phelpston wants it for township money and no fundraising money.
Councillor Ritchie.
I think I've addressed that. Like, as far as the fundraising goes, we can, the handful of people is small. The amount of money we can fundraise is small. But I can point out the other pavilions that have been built. There was very little input put into it, but that's why we chose to go this route, to set so much money aside each year. That's why last year, after the election was over with, and when we went around and we told everybody, you're going to get a roof. Then when it came time for a budget last year, it fell on deaf ears. So that's why when I seen this gas tax money come, I thought, now's our time to step forward. So we're not hampering the budget. We're not hampering. We're just starting something that should have started last year. That's what we're doing. And I ask for your support on that, Mary Allen.
Thank you. All right. Councillor, you want to make a point?
I'm just wondering what happened to my amendment, Mayor.
It's still sitting here. I read it. Are we clear on what we're voting on? Okay. Moved by Hannah, seconded by Cabral, that the motion before council be amended and add that the remaining additional gas tax funds be used to pave the parking lot Midhurst Pavilion. And, yeah, that's what we're voting on this one first, then we're going to go back and deal with, depending on the result of this, the motion that Councillor Ritchie put up. Voting on the amendment first. Yes? Councillor Moore?
Sorry, Mayor Allen. I don't know what I'm voting on. What does it cost? What does it cost for paving of this parking lot? Sorry, thank you.
Well, I'll direct that to CAO Schmidt because it was on a table.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, I'm just trying to look for the actual report to clarify or to provide you with the exact number that we had.
34, something like that?
I think it was around just over $30,000, I believe, is the number.
Okay, Councillor Moore, any? Okay. Deputy Mayor Coghlan?
I'm sorry, I'm going to make one last comment before I vote not to support this. Why don't we just pave all the pavilion parking lots? Hillsdale's not paved, Anton Mills isn't paved, Grenfell, last time I was there, it wasn't paved. So, I mean, there needs to be some sort of, we can't just one-off. This gas tax money is the residents' money. We can't treat it like we won a lottery and we're just gonna spend it on whatever we want. It needs to be calculated, it needs to be part of a plan. I still think that these decisions need to come forward, like CAO Schmidt has just pointed out to us. There may be pressures that we're not even aware of, and if we spend this money on paving parking lots that are gonna create, and I mean, everybody else, if we're gonna pave one, we might as well pave them all. Like, I don't understand how we can say, oh, it's only $32,000. It needs to be a priority or it's not. So I think we should take some time and look at things before we start spending money.
CAO Schmidt, did you want to make a point?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to confirm the price, so again, this is based on staff's estimate at the time, it's subject to change, but it was $22,325 for the Midhurst Pavilion parking lot.
Councillor Cabral?
I just wanted to point out, this was something that they were going to spend money on anyway in the previous report that came to council. So I just think that's a perfect spot to put the additional money then.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're taking a vote on this amendment. Everybody clear on the amendment? All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. Opposed? 1, 2. Are you voting? Yep. That's carried. Okay, and so we're back to the Ritchie and Moore resolution. Be it resolved that this council direct staff, finance department to set aside $75,000 for 2018 year and $75,000 for 2019 year, totally $150 to be set aside and to be used towards the construction of a new steel roof covering the Phelpston Rink on or before the 4th year of this term of council, and that this be funded from the gas tax, and that the remaining additional gas tax funds be used to pave the parking lot at the Midhurst Pavilion. Recorded vote's been requested.
Councillor Ritchie has requested a recorded vote. When I state your name, please state yes or no. Councillor Cabral?
Yes.
Councillor Hannah?
Yes.
Councillor Chapman?
No.
Councillor Moore?
No.
Councillor Ritchie?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Coghlan?
No?
Mayor Allen?
No.
That is a tie vote and the motion is lost. My apologies, the motion is lost.
Any other notices of motion? Okay, we're moving on to items for future consideration. Item 12, any items for future consideration? Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Marilyn. I just wanted to reiterate the request earlier today to have an asset management or roads needs or public works information session. It was I felt, a beneficial session today with bylaw, and I'd like to do something the same so that we can have a strategic plan moving forward.
Thank you. Is that, CAO Schmidt, before we continue with that, is that not part of the budget process? Reviewing the capital?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, the process that that staff undertakes in order to draft the capital budget is exactly that. But I think what the Deputy Mayor is asking for is a more detailed discussion with staff regarding the actual process, if you will. With that said, we're running out of runway in 2019 if you're suggesting that that's going to happen in 2019. So I think the idea would be is that on an annual basis, we ought to be reporting back to council on the status of our asset management plan. And so in tandem with that, I think we can plan for an educational session in the new year.
Thank you. I will withdraw that request then.
Thank you. But I think with all of the discussion we've had with roads, that we look forward to, and maybe we'll be paying more attention as councillors in the discussion in the capital budget vis-a-vis roads than maybe we have in the past. So we look forward to as much detailed information at that time as possible. Thank you. Okay, can I have a mover or a seconder for the bylaws, please? Councillor Cabral and Councillor Chapman. That the bylaws listed herein be signed and sealed by the Mayor and Clerk. 2 1981 Cemetery Bylaw. 2 1982 Amend Fees and Charges, Cemetery Fees. 2 1983 Lease Agreement with the Ontario Provincial Police. 2 1984 OPA 58 Pre-Consultation Process. 2 1985 Appointment of Treasurer, Director of Finance. And 2 1986 Amend Appointment of Chief Financial Officer. All those in favor? Carried. Mover and a seconder to adopt proceedings. Councillor Cabral, Councillor Moore, that the bylaw 2019-88 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council at the regular meeting held on November 6, 2019, listed herein be signed and sealed by the Mayor and Clerk. All those in favor? Carried. And an adjournment, please. Councillor Moore, Councillor Chapman. That the regular meeting of the Township of Springwater does now adjourn at 8:32 p.m. to meet again at regular meeting on November 20, 6:30 p.m. in the Council Chambers at Min Centre, Minising. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you very much.